Welcome to I Hate It Here, the podcast for HR and people professionals, making the hardest job in the world just a little bit easier. I'm Hiba Youssef.
A friend recently introduced me to the phrase, like, bring your chosen self to work, because the reality is that whether it's because of our own personal comfort or fears for our safety or with everything going on in the world, or just because it's not totally realistic to expect somebody to bring their whole authentic self to work every day, lots of us are showing up with like the best version of our chosen self. And maybe we reveal, more of our chosen self to you as we get to know you or as we feel more comfortable in our situation. Or maybe we don't, and that's okay. And that, you can't necessarily demand of your employees that everyone like instantly feel comfortable to be, quote, their authentic self.
Well, welcome back to another episode of your favorite HR podcast. And yes, if I say it enough times, it will actually become true, I promise. This season, I have spent talking about hard truths from burnout to career stalling, and today is no different. I want to talk about CEOs on their worst behavior and why it seems like there's no repercussions for their bad behavior. And joining me today is someone I deeply admire and love to dissect corporate gossip with, Sarah Reynolds. Sarah Reynolds is a creative marketing executive with deep experience driving growth through product marketing, brand strategy, demand gen, and all things content. With a sharp eye for digital transformation and people-first approach, they blend ethics, equity, and innovation into everything they do. A fierce advocate for pay equity and inclusive language, they're non-binary, unapologetic, and not afraid to shout about making tech and work better for everyone. Now I say, Sarah, welcome to the pod.
Thanks for having me. And I feel like if I say that I'm everyone's favorite non-binary person, that'll become true eventually. So really, really glad to be everyone's favorite non-binary person here on everyone's favorite HR podcast.
See? We could be making this up. No one would know, right?
Isn't that life? We could be making this up and no one would know.
Yeah, exactly. No one would actually know. I'm trying to remember the first time we met, and I truly cannot remember it, but I do remember that it felt like we instantly bonded. Actually, I couldn't really tell if you liked me or not, but then you made a joke and I was like, maybe they do like me.
I feel like I get that a lot. People tell me that I have a very like hard outer shell, but they also tell me that I have a face that like doesn't hide my emotions. So I don't know how I'm like simultaneously really hard to read and really easy to read. But apparently I do have that reputation. So sorry from future me to past you. I liked you instantly.
No. Oh my God. Sorry, not to make this about me. Thinking about me and you like me, whatever.
Can you just talk about a friendship for like an hour?
A whole hour. People would enjoy that actually. No, but I get the same feedback from people where they're like, oh, you're so intimidating the first time I met you. And I'm like, really? Because I just say like the weirdest shit the first time I meet people usually.
I just go home and like think about everything that I have ever said and how everyone hates me. So, it's normal stuff.
Really? I just think about how I probably shouldn't say half the things I say. I remember I met someone for like the first time during the summer and I was like, so sorry. Like they like hugged me and I was like, so sorry if I'm sweaty. I wear natural deodorant. And they were like, cool.
Thanks for telling me.
I don't even know you and you're telling me about your natural deodorant. I'm like, yeah, I sweat. So I just, thought would I break the ice with that.
Better than them being like, I can tell.
Yeah. No, they were like, okay, thanks for telling me. Natural deodorant is worth that. Anyways, we have talked so much about so many topics. So I feel like this will be your first time, but definitely not your last time on the pod. And one that we've been talking a lot about lately is CEOs on their worst behavior. But before I get to that, I've been asking every person this season on the pod, what is a hard truth about work? My fun opening question.
That's a really great question. I would say, so I used to say a lot, like, bring your authentic self to work. And, I try and show up as my authentic self. I'm, queer, I'm non-binary, I'm disabled, I'm out loud about my identity. But a friend recently introduced me to the phrase, like, bring your chosen self to work, because the reality is that whether it's because of our own personal comfort or fears for our safety or with everything going on in the world, or just because it's not totally realistic to expect somebody to bring their whole authentic self to work every day, lots of us are showing up with like the best version of our chosen self. And maybe we reveal, more of our chosen self to you as we get to know you or as we feel more comfortable in our situation. Or maybe we don't, and that's okay. And that, you can't necessarily demand of your employees that everyone like instantly feel comfortable to be, quote, their authentic self. I mean, I know that like my sense of humor that you hear probably around my house wouldn't fly in a work environment. Even if
Same.
I'm super open about my identity, you're probably, I hope, you're not going to get that version of me in a work environment because it's not something I choose to bring to work. It's not going to, be good for anyone. We're talking about bad behavior on this episode, right? So I think, trying to think about, not just how you expect employees to show up and how you can reframe your expectation into like the best version of their chosen self. But also I'm trying to work on my language around like bring your chosen self to work and not your authentic self to work. Because I think the hard truth is that's not a great expectation anymore.
Yeah, it's not a reality for a lot of people. There are like a lot of things my coworkers don't know about me, and that's by choice.
Totally.
Like you are not my best friends. You have not been with me 15 years through strife. Like I'm not about to unload all my self on you.
Totally. And I think like there's things that you might that phenomenon is called like masking, where you don't necessarily like share everything, right?
Yeah.
And some people mask because they're afraid. Some people mask for good reason, though. Like, I wouldn't want to work in a workplace where everyone's maybe like politics were on full display 24/7. I wouldn't want to work in a workplace where everyone's feelings about trans people were on display 24/7, because I'm pretty sure that would get in the way of our working relationship. So I think that, while oftentimes psychologists talk about like the harm of masking and having to do all this like self-censure and how it takes up space in your brain, the reality is that because work is a different environment than like our home, our friends, our family, you're always going to have a slightly different version of your chosen self that you're bringing to that environment.
Yeah. Also, like, I don't think people as an HR leader need to be knowing that much about their HR leader.
You want to be a mystery, an international woman of mystery.
Exactly. I am a woman of mystery, I think. Probably not. Okay. Let's get into our CEOs behaving badly. Or maybe I'll call this episode CEOs Gone Wild.
Yeah. A video I will not be renting.
That video that might perform really well. Because we're in like a hot moment where like the Coldplay thing just happened last week. I like that it's called the Coldplay thing, but like CEO scandals are basically all the rage right now. So what is one that you are thinking about? Wow, words are really hard for me today.
I think everybody is thinking about the Coldplay. Well, the astronomer. I'm not going to like drag Chris Martin into this. Like the astronomer scandal that happened last week. But actually, the thing that maybe stuck with me most on this topic is I was recently watching our combined favorite streaming service, Dropout. And they have a new show where called the Smarty Pants Society, where they give like fake PowerPoint presentations to each other about like comical, fake topics. And one of the comedians, Lily Du, was giving this presentation about how she wants to see more gender equity in people who have two families. That has nothing to do with the rest of this story. But as part of her presentation, she was saying, how am I going to get away with this? Well, I'm going to have to become a CEO, a female CEO, in order to have a lot of work trips to go see my second family. And at the end of the presentation, one of the other cast members in the Q&A section asked her what kind of toxic CEO she planned to be. Like, what scandal did she plan to have? And it stuck with me because like not only do we have this gross word CEO for female CEOs or, femme CEOs, we also have sort of the cultural expectation, even in a room full of comedians, that female CEOs are toxic, to the point where she could be asked like, what kind of scandal do you plan to have? And she instantly understood why she was being asked it. She could instantly reference like multiple female CEOs with scandals. And, she could pick between like major themes of types of scandals that she was going to have, right? And it really stuck with me, especially in light of that like astronomer situation, because, a lot of the blame that I saw being placed online was headed towards the like femme head of HR, and the masculine CEO, who, by the way, is like violating all of the, social contract and employment contract of like not fraternizing with your direct reports and your subordinates, was kind of like getting off easy, I guess I would say. And I guess it was sort of like the combination of those two things that made me really think about this topic and think about like how maybe gender plays into the way that CEOs behaving badly are perceived culturally for us.
Yeah, that was such an interesting scandal. I made a funny post about like, don't date your boss. And then someone in the comments was like, I don't like that you made a post about dating your boss anchoring on the HR person. And I was like, well, if you read the rest of the post, you would realize that like that was just like an intro line. They didn't like that either. They followed up in DMs, whatever. I don't care. I thought it was like I thought it
I'm
was
not still
fair.
thinking about it.
I thought it was fair feedback. People, I mean, like, listen, I'm always down for people to like give feedback. And I'm down to hear it. I think I was writing from like a very HR perspective.
Mm.
And then the next day followed up with like a post about power dynamics, but like he is to blame. Like he abused a system of power. Yes. But I also think as like the head of HR, it's almost like worse when we break the rules. And I
Yeah.
think that was like the thing that people weren't talking as much about. Like they made it about her and like, oh, you can never trust HR. But
Yes.
like the deeper conversation I wanted to have was like, we are not above the rules either. And so
Yes.
like we should talk about that, not because I'm blaming all the blame on her, but it's almost like he really abused the system of power, but she also really like damaged her job future as well.
Mm.
Because like how do you then trust a head of HR who clearly doesn't believe in the rules
Mm.
and took that step, which is like very against everything we're like meant to protect with our policies and procedures. I don't know. It was a mixed bag for me. I like he behaved terribly. I think they both deserve blame, but I also was like, we are HR. Like we shouldn't, we actually can't act like that.
Yeah, there's like a famous tweet, I think, that was like the only department where if one person behaves badly, like the whole department gets called an asshole is
Yeah.
HR. Like if
Yeah.
I'm a jerk to somebody, it's not like, oh, marketing's a bunch of assholes, but like,
Yeah.
if you're a jerk to somebody, that it's like, oh, HR is a bunch of assholes. Um, I, my initial gut reaction, I'll be totally honest, was like, both of y'all should know better.
Yeah.
Like,
100%.
but there's no test to put that C in front of your title, baby. Like,
No.
uh,
Maybe
like,
there should be, honestly.
yeah, maybe there should be. Maybe after this, we should institute that. Like that can be our
CEO
next business
101.
venture.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it just demonstrates incredibly poor judgment. And to me, I kind of piggyback off what you're saying. Like in both of those cases, like if you think that that is good judgment, how can I trust your judgment on the domains that you're supposed to be overseeing? Like how can I
Yeah.
trust your business judgment if I can't trust your judgment in your personal life? And I think that that's a lot of like the CEO behaving badly topic, or leaders in general behaving badly. I think that that's why leaders are under such a microscope, because so much of our job relies on our judgment and people trusting our judgment.
Yeah. And it's so interesting when leadership behaves badly and then faces no repercussions, which is like
Yes.
again what this whole episode is about, because it's just it can be toxic so fast. Like I've worked places where the leaders are horrendous and doing things where I'm like, that is actually like really questionable morally, ethically, legally. And nothing happens to them. And like it's almost like everyone knows. And I'm like, what's going on here? Like when everyone knows the leader is bad and then nobody does anything, I'm like, what's happening? We'll get to that later. But first I want to ask, like, as a CMO, like what's the first move when the CEO becomes the problem?
I know I say this probably too often, but have you considered hitting the bricks? Meaning getting away from the situation. I joke, but I think that like one of the things you have to develop as a chief people officer or a CMO is like, when is it too much? Like when have we gone too far? And I think unfortunately it's easier to see that maybe in hindsight to some of these like scenarios, because you're so caught up in like, I have to solve this problem and everybody's looking at me to solve this problem.
Yeah.
But I think, beyond sort of like reconsidering my job prospects, I think that there's a lot of things that you should do, not in a vacuum, but together, like as a leadership team and together with your board, especially, that require you to sort of like build a cross-functional plan for what happens next. And the reason that I say cross-functional plan is because like, I might hope to be an expert in what I do, but I'm not an expert in what you do. And I really need your partnership at a time like that to know, what are employees thinking about this? Like, how do you think this internal communication is going to land? How do you think my external communication is going to land? My crisis PR firm that I've hired, in the last 5 hot seconds says that we should do this. Does that really sound authentic to you? And is that going to work, with employees, or is that going to make the situation worse? Right. What types of like legal and ethical boundaries have we gone past? Stuff like that. I think really what it comes down to, like, you can have the best plan in the world like that, but that's a coping mechanism. Really, like, what it comes down to is the person at fault, whether they're the CEO or another leader, willing to tell the truth and to take accountability and to actually face repercussions for their actions? Because like, the best crisis PR firm in the world, like, no Olivia Pope is going to swoop in and just like make it all better. Like, you are going to have to face the consequences of your actions. And they might not be, I might think that you should face more consequences for your actions, right? But, regardless, you're going to have to own up to it, and you're going to have to take accountability. And I think oftentimes it's not like the yous and the me's of the world who are bad at making a plan. It's the refusal maybe to take the accountability and take ownership of what happened that leads the best laid plans to go astray.
Yeah, it was interesting watching the astronomer, because again, this just happened, so it's like really top of mind. Watching their PR response, like, they didn't issue a statement, I think, for like 24 hours, 24 to close to 24 to 48. And I think the entire internet was like so enamored, like, those cultural moments, and maybe they have to be studied. Those cultural moments are like suddenly all the internet is like on the same page all at once. It is like magical and also terrifying.
Yeah, you
And
never want to be the main character of the internet.
No.
Never.
No. Like, that day, the submarine day was also a very fascinating day. Like, there are many fascinating days on the internet, and recently this astronomer was like top of mind, but they like took their time to put out a statement, and it's almost like that time continued to fuel narratives that were like spiraling really fast. And I was like,
the first statement that came out was like fake. Like, there was a fake, like an AI generated like statement from the CEO where he like purported to blame Coldplay and like blame the Kiss Cam and like all this stuff. And it turned out to be a hoax. But the phrase like nature abhors a vacuum comes to mind, because like, in the absence of information, or to your point, in the absence of a statement, it like blew up, and suddenly everybody was like throwing all kinds of theories at it, or putting out fake AI statements, or like whatever it was, before they had a chance to officially respond.
Yeah, that like just fueled it so bad. What in your mind is like a scandal you can recover from and one you can't recover from? Like, essentially the CEO stepped down, and we'll talk about that later, but like, the CEO stepped down, that's clearly one you can't really recover from.
Well, unless you come back as a co-CEO later and then step down again and blame pandemic.
Like, we'll get to that in the fun section. We'll get to that in the segment later on. We're calling the despite circumstances, they persisted. Just kidding. That was bad. Like, what is like not like, what can you not come back from?
What can you not come back from, or what do I wish you couldn't come back from? Like, I wish that, for example, like, fraternizing with your subordinates or sexually harassing your subordinates was something that you could not recover from. Yeah. I really wish that after everything that happened with like Me Too, and with the cultural conversation about like power dynamics, and, just generally how we think about like work and our relationship to work in general, I would really hope that that would be something that you could not recover from. But there's plenty of examples of that being recoverable. I don't know if that's like the right way of phrasing that.
We'll get to those.
Yeah.
How about this? We'll play our game. Remember one day we said we're going to make an episode like all of our favorite improv shows where it's not this episode, but there will be another episode where we play some games. But the game I want to play is like some CEO scandals. And then we can talk through each of them. And did they come back or not? Okay, so in 2019, the McDonald's CEO was fired for violating company policy after a consensual relationship with an employee, but it also turned out he had multiple undisclosed relationships and potentially approved stock grants for those involved.
Yes.
And McDonald's did sue him, recovered, I think they said $105 million, and publicly condemned the breach of trust. It's like one of the biggest compensation recoveries that has happened.
Yeah.
It was very public. And it really led to like a bigger discussion around exec comp, exit agreements, clawback triggers, like fraternization policies, all of that. But later on, he was quietly hired by a private equity firm.
Which I feel like is the story of many of these. Like a lot of the CEOs who step down or resign because of bad behavior, either have accumulated in a massive amount of wealth doing, the job that they've been doing for the last, decades of their career and ride off into the sunset, or they're quietly hired as consultants by, either other firms, by PE, by VC, by, McKinsey, by, somebody who is purporting to offer their services to, clients. Because the reason I guess I said I wish that wasn't something you could recover from is because it's often framed in this terms of like, well, they have all this great financial knowledge. They have all this great business acumen. They successfully ran the company. They successfully grew the company. They delivered to the board on, financial promises or to their investors, right? Quarter after quarter, they were very successful and they made a mistake. And I think that like that narrative is really challenging because it leads to like giving folks a lot of additional chances when this is the type of bad behavior that we're talking about.
Yeah, I mean, this person literally had multiple relationships with people, like according to the reports, and did pay back the money, but like it's wild to me that they went on and got another job. And
But
I think like
he didn't even pay back the whole. He didn't
No.
pay back like the whole amount of money that was paid out to other people, or even his whole compensation package. Like I think they recovered, like you said, like $105 million, and it was like one of the largest recoveries in a situation like this. Like typically, exec comp clauses are, like lawyered to death to the point where, you don't want there to be a clawback situation, right? So if you're on that side of the table, it's interesting that that they were able to claw back so much compared to other similar situations, but $105 million in comparison to his total comp package or his total comp that he'd received over his entire tenure, it sounds like a big number, but it's not.
Yeah. Ugh. Okay. My next example, I feel like a lot of people will know this one, Adam Newman from WeWork. So, I mean, if you watched the Apple TV show, was it Apple TV with Anne Hathaway? First of all, big Anne Hathaway fan. But there's a whole Apple TV show about him as a CEO where he grew WeWork to a $47 billion valuation, which none of us understood because it was literally just real estate. Still very confused about it. And he had things like private jets. They took tequila shots during their all hands. They had just really interesting things that they were doing at the company, which all unraveled when they tried to IPO and failed. But he left with a golden parachute. I think they said about 1.7 billion, sued SoftBank, and then actually is back again raising money.
Mm-hmm.
They made a whole TV show, Sarah. They made a whole TV show.
How?
About the wildness of what was happening internally at WeWork.
This is why when people are like cancel culture has gone too far, this is where I point to and I'm like, I actually think maybe it should go far here. Like a little bit. How is he not untouchable? Like, especially because in this case, not especially, again, especially in business brain, because he lost so much money. They failed to IPO, they failed to exit, right? Like this isn't a situation that you could categorize if you see the world that way as he made one mistake, like that didn't have anything to do with his success in running the business.
He made lots of mistakes.
I don't understand.
When he came back and they were like, he's raising money again. I'm like, who in the right mind would give them money? Who would give him money? Like you could not convince me to give him money. But somehow he convinced a lot of people to give him money.
That one blows my mind. And like, I thought that WeWork, after that whole thing happened, would disappear. But I was in a WeWork like literally a month ago. They're still around. I'm like, wait, I thought that the company was like losing money. I thought you had to sell your real estate, like to pay for stuff, like to even pay for his exit package. Like, but I'm here.
Do you remember when WeWork started? It was like hot to work there. Like I knew people who were like, I would kill to work at WeWork. And I was like, I would kill to win the lottery and never work again. But like,
I don't dream of labor.
Each their own. Each their own. But I know a lot of people that were like, I would kill to work there. It's such like a sexy brand. And I was with them when the story unraveled and more reports came out and the TV show, it's just interesting. Like, I mean, these examples are public. People can look these up. It's not like everything got buried and the new investors didn't know who he was. You Google his name, that's what comes up.
Right.
It's wild to me. Okay, one more example in my fun segment called CEO examples. I remember this one very deeply. The away luggage CEO, Steph Corey, came out that she was micromanaging people, pressuring people to sacrifice their PTO, sending really intense late night messages in the name of customer obsession. The company initially defended her. Then she stepped down. Then she came back. Then she stepped down again. And it was very confusing. And the bigger criticism was all around like toxic startup culture, performative wellness perks, and like the blurred line between high standards and exploitation. And I remember this one because I have an away bag. One, I really like it. And two, I remember when the reports came out, the media low-key dragged her.
Oh, yeah.
And I remember being like, wait a minute. She's just like an intense, like, yes, she's setting a toxic environment. Yes, she's an intense CEO, but like, she's not having inappropriate relationships with her employees. She's not abusing the power and doing some of the wild things we have heard these other CEOs do. Why is she put under such a microscope and criticized so much? And to be clear, what she did was wrong. She was fostering a toxic environment. But in the grand scheme of things, probably not as wrong as some of these other examples I've read you, right?
I mean, I remember like reading the article that broke this story and like reading the Slack messages and stuff like that and being like, I've received worse Slack messages than that. I wonder if I have screenshots of those and should I inform this reporter? It's not that she didn't do something that was truly awful. I do think though, like I'm your favorite non-binary friend. I make everything about gender. I definitely think that this was about gender. And I think that going back to that like toxic CEO stereotype, like she was 100% given different treatment than like many founder and CEOs who are mass presenting, who have cultivated much more toxic work environments than that. I mean, I have a friend who works for a CEO who recently had an offsite where they wanted to talk about company culture and they were working on the slide deck ahead of time. And the CEO slide on fixing company culture only had one idea on it. And it said, all leaders have to stop taking PTO for the next
year. What?
That would, and my friend was like, no. And how did that fix culture? But again, like that was one of the things that she was really widely criticized for. And I don't think, unfortunately, I wish we lived in a world again where like, you know, you could take PTO and feel totally comfortable, but I don't think that that is necessarily unusual as behavior in somebody who is trying to drive like their version of a high performance culture. I just think that their version of a high performance culture is really misguided.
Yeah. I'm laughing because you and I are probably reading the article at like our desks in an office back then, the away article, and probably having the same thoughts because I read the same thing. I was like, yeah, okay, I could see how you could paint this as toxic, but like some of the things other people have done are way worse. And on the note there, I want to do a segue to actually reading you real stories. So I gave you the media version of these CEOs misbehaving and like outcomes, and you can Google everything we talked about. It's all very public. I want to share some stories from like my community, what readers write in and write to me about CEOs. And I just want to get some live reactions. And I just want to tell everyone, Sarah does not know what the hell I'm about to read. So whatever they are reacting to live. Okay? Here's my first story.
Your editor is getting ready to hit the bleep button.
They're like, oh God, don't do this. Hey, well, why do you always do this to her? Okay. The first one was submitted to me. Someone replied to a prompt in my newsletter because I have a prompt in there that says, tell me your I hate it here moment. And people reply with like very interesting things. This is what someone replied with. I'm running a meeting with 7 employees to get feedback on their area and workload. The CEO pops in. I reassure everyone that they can speak freely. I already know how this meeting was going, and I prepped the CEO, and we had a plan to address all of their concerns and help. The employees start to give feedback, and the CEO loses it, in all caps, then tells them they are professionals, the job is not that hard, and to get over it. It's bullshit that they feel that they can't express their feelings covering 2 to 3 other positions, and the meeting ends with 3 people in tears. We have since lost 3 employees, and my meeting with the CEO after was so bad that my meeting with her was so bad that they were, and the name calling, sorry, I butchered that. Please edit me. The meeting was so bad, and it ended with the CEO basically name calling the employees. We have a toxic environment and the company is failing.
Yeah, you think? I mean, oh my God.
They prepped the CEO. Like the CEO knew.
That also tells me that you knew that the CEO was coming.
Yeah.
Why was the CEO coming?
Maybe it was like a let's give feedback in a safe way. And then the HR person prepped the CEO, like they're going to share feedback. Here's how to respond. I have prepped my CEO for stuff like that, where if I know like we do live question and answer at our retreat, I will pre-give him like the answer of like how to respond to them. Usually he responds to them how he wants to, but it's like helpful for him to see what's coming so he can address it head on. So that was my thought as to what they did, but the CEO just went off book.
Feedback at a retreat with like leaders, or feedback on like an employee engagement survey where it's confidential. Feedback like that is really hard to manage, those situations where you have the ultimate ability to like prep and try and make it a really good experience for everyone involved. Like a very small group of folks, like you're not necessarily creating a lot of psychological safety in that environment, inviting the CEO to join like midway through the meeting, and like then to have it, go badly. It's like, I mean, first of all, it's terrible behavior by the CEO. Like being able to take feedback is something that as an adult, like all of us should be able to do. Feedback is a gift. Like someone trusts you.
But being prepped and knowing that this is coming and then going in and going off the rails because someone started giving you feedback is a wild reaction.
It is, but it's not unusual. And that's where I do not want to blame the HR person who tried to put this together, because I 100% think that they did this with the very best of intentions. And I really do think that they did as much prep as should be required to make this go off. And I'm not sure I would have chosen, unless I was forced to include the CEO in that meeting. I've been forced to. I totally have. And that is a rock and a hard place. It totally is. And I don't think it's ever been a productive conversation. So like, it's not, it's like, oh my God, that's awful. And that is exactly how I thought the story was going to go when you started reading it. And that's so bad. That's such a condemnation. Like I really, like, we can do better.
Yeah, we can. I feel bad. Like it is instinctive to like be defensive when you first get feedback. And I feel like once you've reached the CEO level,
your whole job is feedback.
Exactly. So it's like kind of wild to me that like you would lose your shit over feedback.
Like your whole job is feedback.
Yeah. Okay. Well, moving on. My next story. At an old company, the CEO had his mistress on the payroll, even though she never worked a day.
Oh, no.
He then used the workers to move her into a beachfront apartment. I feel like the wife knew, but didn't care because he was rich. What the helly? I love when people say, what the helly?
Okay, so I have been in a situation where I heard a story from a friend about a CEO who had their mistress on the payroll and tried to give her a job for which she was not qualified.
Oh boy.
And had similar situations, only the person also inserted themselves into work. Oh my God. I can't believe that this is a thing that we are still doing. But as the astronomer scandal showed me just this week, it is still a thing that we are doing.
Like, could you imagine being the HR person who was processing payroll and you were like, who's this employee I've never heard of? What did they do at this company?
How are you not hitting the bricks?
I would be so uncomfortable. But then it brings me to this other point, and like I have questions about this later, but sometimes CEO power goes unchecked.
Totally.
Maybe let's talk about this for a second, because who is the checks and balances for the CEO? You would
Hopefully
think,
the leadership team and the board.
okay, but you and I talked about this on Twitter last week. A lot of people, I can't remember how many people liked this tweet. A lot of people were confused that the CEO of Astronomer was put on leave. They were like, who put him on leave?
Yeah.
And then I realized a lot of people don't understand that a board of directors exists. So talk me through it. Like, explain it to me like I'm 5, even though I know what a board of directors is. But like, for everyone else who's listening who might not have experience in startups, early stage startups, or maybe massive publicly traded company who don't even know who their board of directors is, explain.
So your CEO effectively works for your board of directors, or in a publicly traded company, sometimes you'll hear the CEO works for investors. They work for the people who have financial stake in the company. In startups, oftentimes what you see, or in PE or VC backed companies, oftentimes what you see is that the board is made up purely of investors in the company. So oftentimes that means that the board is like very focused on financial returns. But they're also very homogenous in terms of professional background, current career, and also, I'm going to say it again, gender. So oftentimes that board is looking to the CEO to provide a financial return. That's why you set targets with your board. That's why you report to the board on how you're doing. But they should also have governance over other areas of your company. They should be thinking about things like, do you have the right types of employee policies in place? Do you have the right types of fraternization policies in place? Do you have the crisis plans in place if something bad happens? And oftentimes boards, especially those that are very investor heavy, they focus on financial crises. Like what happens if Silicon Valley Bank fails? What happens if the market tanks? What happens if we all of a sudden some very disruptive company comes in and starts, eating our proverbial lunch? They don't necessarily always focus on like the ethical question or the PR question that can arise when you have these like very public scandals. Issues of bad behavior. So I think like a thing that we should learn from this is that diversity in boards really matter. And what you see in larger publicly traded companies is that there's been a big push for board diversity, because in large publicly traded companies, it's not just like the top investors who sit on the board. It's also folks who are specifically hired to the board and oftentimes compensated for their time and effort for their expertise in different areas. And so oftentimes those are the types of companies where you'll see more diversity in professional background. You'll see maybe an ex-CMO sitting on the board, or an ex-chief people officer sitting on the board. You'll see folks with a revenue background sitting on the board, or somebody with an industry background sitting on the board of a company. You'll also tend to see more gender diversity, more racial diversity, more age diversity on those boards, because there's been a push for those types of viewpoints over the last couple of years. And also because it genuinely makes your company, again, more efficient, more effective, more innovative. All of those things that we say about having diverse teams is also true at the board level. But it's really difficult to break into those types of roles. And again, not to make everything about gender, but, there was a study that was done a few years ago that showed that most femme folks who have one board seat tend to have more than one, because the very hardest thing to do as a femme presenting person is to get your first board seat. Because a lot of the traditional paths to the board are not necessarily the roles that we occupy in the leadership team, or it's not necessarily a friendly environment to outside voices, especially in company boards where, you're primarily sitting around the table with folks with huge financial investments in the organization.
Yeah, it's so interesting, because I met a woman who is working on the problem of getting more women on boards, and she wants to help educate people. We might do a podcast episode later this year where her goal is to get more women on boards, and she wants to educate people as to how to get on them.
I think that's so needed. And I also think that it's both ways, right? It's kind of like criticisms leveled at femme presenting folks for not negotiating their salary. Well, yes, we can learn to be more effective negotiators or be more confident in negotiation, but we also have to change the cultural like system that, perpetuates this stereotype going forward. So yeah, I would love to learn more tips and tricks for being a better candidate for a board seat. And I would love for boards to be more hospitable to diverse candidates. I mean, I participated in some research with a marketing firm actually that was released at Cannes Lion that was all about like, why are CMOs not considered for board seats more often? We have this breadth of experience dealing with all of these different topics in companies, including things like crisis management, which is should be a core board function. And we're often overlooked. And, of course, my quote is all about gender, but here we are.
I mean, it's hard to have this conversation. It's impossible to have this conversation without talking about gender. And it's because we do hold people to different standards and we are treated differently. And that is something like when we look at these CEOs and their bad behaviors, the ones who tend to go on and have a second wind of a career and the ones whose career prospects are basically gone. Like I think about the astronomer CPO and I'm like, she might never work in HR again.
Yeah. Like Boston. So I live in Boston, or I live outside of Boston. Boston is a very big, small town. Like in the tech community, I tell people all the time, like, don't be an asshole because you are going to see these people again. Right? Like these folks, like company after company, we kind of like remix, right? I have worked over and over again with different people that I've worked with before, or who have worked for bosses that I've worked with before, or who are mutual friends with some of my friends, or who are connected to people I know on Facebook or LinkedIn or, whatever social media, right? Like it is a very small community. And I think you're right. Like, I think that is going to be a very challenging situation for her to navigate in a way that I don't necessarily think it's going to be the same for the CEO who has been placed on leave or stepped down.
Yeah. Step down. I mean, it was really hard. Like I had so many layers of feelings I had to sort through as that scandal was happening because I like actually was like thinking about her and her role. And I was like, I would never do anything to damage my future career prospects. Like I not cheating aside, because a lot of people were like, well, aren't you going to talk about their families that they wrecked? And I was like, hey, I'm not the morality police. It's like cheating is wrong. Maybe it's wrong to me. It could be right to somebody else, but like, that's not the discussion I'm here to have. I'm here to talk about like actual work implications, less personal stuff. But I like couldn't stop thinking like, how does her career ever recover after that? How were you ever trusted for your judgment? Like it was like honestly heartbreaking because I was just like, she made a choice. I don't know if she realized it was like a career ending choice. And yes, we have to live with the consequences of all of our actions. But I just like kept thinking to myself, like I would be devastated if I didn't get to do the thing that I loved so much all the time because I made a mistake.
And we don't know how much of a choice it really was. If your boss comes to you and wants to be in a relationship with you and says, I'll give you a promotion if you're, in a relationship with me.
To be clear, we're not saying that's what happened.
We're not saying that's what happened, but like that's the reason that power dynamic is such a big part of this conversation, or should be such a big part of this conversation, because there's a huge power differential when you're talking about a relationship with your subordinate. Like he controls her comp. He controls whether or not she has a job tomorrow. He controls what her job title is, what her remit is. He controls her future earning potential. He controls everything. Like, again, we shouldn't speculate, but like we don't know the like situation that ended up on the kiss cam. All we know is what we saw on the kiss cam and what happened afterward,
which looked not great. Also, in most places, like especially early stage startups, the CPO reports to the CEO.
Totally.
That's like your manager. Like not only does your CEO have impact on all the things you've listed, but now this is your literal manager.
Right.
It could not be me. I could never. It like made my heart hurt. I was like, I'm anxious for them. Like I don't think I was like reading it. I was like, I'm getting too anxious over this. It would just not be for me. But back to other CEOs and their bad behavior. I have like a few more examples because I like talking these through because I think they're very interesting. I remember when this was in the news too, like the Uber CEO. So he was caught on a dash cam berating an Uber driver who was challenging the company's pricing model. And the video went viral. I think I watched the video. I really cannot remember. But then all the things came out about Uber, like, oh, toxic leadership, oh, deep cultural issues. And it like really ignited this conversation around like bro culture, sexual harassment, lack of accountability. And it was like pretty big and splashy and like in the news constantly. And he did resign in 2017, but then later reemerged as like the founder and CEO of Cloud Kitchens, which is a ghost kitchen startup, which let me tell you, when he reemerged, I had to Google what is a ghost kitchen. I had no idea.
I knew what that was.
I was like, wow, I don't know what a ghost kitchen is. Like I've never worked in kitchens. Like I was like, I gotta figure out what this means. But he reemerged, and now the startup again is valued at billions. And I think he faced potentially like very little public reckoning. Like he came back again, got to have a second wind as a CEO.
I think the interesting thing was that from a brand perspective, like putting my CMO hat on, like Uber took the brand hit rather than him personally in that case, because I think that it very quickly shifted from this one person to the entire company's culture and all the bad things that came out since then about everything with Uber, right? I think that it's really interesting to look at like the different ways that CEOs weather or don't weather these situations, because you know, the astronomer situation, for example, it's not about the company. It's very specifically about the two people and maybe the one other employee who's there who clearly knew what was going on. Like,
not there.
Right?
But they said she was not there.
Right.
No, she was not there.
It like Uber is like, it very much got attached to the brand name. And I think that the brand took the reputation hit in a way that the ex-CEO clearly didn't, you know, maybe similar to WeWork in that way. Although I would argue that, you know, he personally took a reputation hit. They made a TV show about him. His name, again, if you Google his name, you know, that's what comes up. But again, he hasn't necessarily faced the same like issues in raising funds or raising capital for his next venture. Whereas, you know, WeWork is still known as this, you know, company that, you know, had this scandal attached to it.
Yeah. That's really interesting. Like divorcing the people from the brand too, because that's just so huge. Like when you think about us as executives, like part of our identity is also part of the brand's identity. And like I do remember like when it came out, initially it was really focused on him, and then it did spread so fast to like, oh, well, there's a culture of sexual harassment at this company, and oh, there's a bro culture, and oh, this and oh, that. And it became a much bigger conversation simply because he was an executive at the company.
Yeah. And I have worked with friends who have worked for CEOs who have kept PR firms on retainer, whose job was managing their personal image. They were paid by company dollars to manage the CEO's personal image, but it was divorced from the PR firms that I managed or my friend managed that managed the company's profile, even though they were both paid for by the company. And I think one of the things that you might see if you were to ever like pull back the curtain on how some of these like situations were managed from a comms perspective, that if you have those two competing interests, if a CEO knows that they're probably departing from that organization anyway, they might get counsel from a crisis PR firm who's hired to protect their personal reputation, like in particular, that actually they should pivot the conversation to be the company versus themselves. I don't know that that's what happened here, but I think it's really interesting to see how fast that happened in both of these cases for both of these folks. And just knowing what I know about like how some of these situations are managed internally, I wouldn't be surprised if at some point somebody had to pick which one of these am I going to try and like manage the reputation around.
Yeah. It would be fun to be a crisis PR firm, I think. Olivia Pope seemed to have a fun job.
Oh, no. I have worked with crisis PR firms. God bless y'all. I could never do that job. One of my least favorite parts of being a chief marketing officer is having to interact with crisis management of any kind. It's very stressful. It's really frustrating. So many crises could be avoided. I'm sure that you have this experience dealing with like internal crises from a chief people officer perspective.
I'm different. I love a crisis. I'm like, ooh, a crisis. Let me jump in.
You don't ever get like, hey, if you just asked me about this before you did that, we could have like avoided this entirely.
Oh yeah. I circle back to that at the end. I say, hey, let's talk about lessons learned. This should have never happened. This should never happen. Let's talk about why this should never happen. No, I like love a good crisis. Like, I just like fun. Like, maybe it's like that's what draws me into startups and their chaos and their insanity. And I just like have a good time. And you know what I just remembered recently? This happened, and it literally happened like a few months ago. The Kohl's CEO. I forgot about him. He was investigated because he had a business relationship with a vendor, or like he had a personal relationship with a vendor. And then he didn't disclose that it was a personal relationship. And then it violated the company ethics and policy. And then reportedly he spent a lot of money with this said vendor and didn't disclose that it was a private relationship. I just remembered that one. Sorry. As we're talking about CEOs behaving badly. That came to my head.
And I think that like, if that hadn't necessarily been a publicly traded company, it might have come out, and like that, again, that's another thing that like might not have been considered a scandal if it wasn't a company of the size and reputation of Kohl's. Yeah. Right. And the fiduciary responsibilities, obviously, to their investors. But I think that like a lot of these things, it's like, I think if you were to do okay, everybody raise your hand if you've ever like employed a friend of your leader, whatever seat that leader occupies, like a lot of us would probably put our hands up because we've been in that situation.
So like people write in horror stories to me all the time, and the amount of horror stories about CEOs is wild. CEOs who want to review ADA requests. CEOs who want
Mine declined my ADA request. Just declined. Like, that's a thing.
It is. The rules around ADA requests really bug me, because I'm like, the company can basically say, I did my service. I can't provide this. Sorry. It's tough. Like, we're talking about all these CEOs and bad behavior. And there's one last one I have to talk about, and then we can stop. We have to talk about Elizabeth Holmes.
The OG.
I read Bad Blood. The book was a brilliant read. Brilliant read. John Kerry. Thank you. Best book I've ever read. Best book, easily. I would put in the top 10. And it was really interesting because she was just painted as this person who convinced a lot of powerful men to give her money, and then went on and didn't even make the thing she said she was going to make. And it got and lied about a lot of it, right? Can't defraud investors. But I thought hers, she's in jail.
Rare jailing. A rare jailing in this episode about like things that sound a lot like crimes.
a rare hers were legit crimes, though. Like, that's where I don't even know if we could even have the gender conversation, because I'm like, she legitimately broke the law and did a lot of really illegal things. But that, like, remember how televised it was?
They made a TV show or a movie with
Amanda Seyfried. Yep.
Yeah.
And it was really televised. And I still remember at the time thinking, I'm going to be very, I know she broke a lot of laws. I know she got what was potentially deserved. But I also couldn't stop thinking about like how many male CEOs get away with also just as bad stuff and don't end up getting discovered.
Yeah, you kind of like, you absolutely do not have to give it to her, but like incredible performance. Maybe let's just say that totally illegal performance is kind of like the wasn't there somebody like a socialite in New York who like scammed a bunch of folks
Anna Delvey?
Yes, like again, like you absolutely do not have to give it to her. And
I don't look at our faces right now.
Yeah, I forget sometimes that this is an audio medium for many of your podcast listeners, so that will not necessarily translate. That my long pregnant pause there, but just imagine my face, like the second half of the kombucha meme, where she like sips it and she's like, ew, and then she sips it and she's like, maybe.
Yeah,
like I was doing that, maybe.
Yeah, I recommend you read the book. Bad Blood is really good. It made me really just think about a lot of things.
It
And
also, I think it's shown a really interesting light for folks who are not necessarily in the world of like raising capital and like
yeah,
how that works and like how little vetting sometimes was happening in those
yeah,
rooms where, she was pitching something that scientists were literally saying like is not
it's
possible.
impossible. Yeah. Yeah.
And
I remember.
like people were it's portrayed as people were throwing money at her without really any checks and balances, back to your conversation on like who is supposed to be the check and the balance here, to say like, is this idea feasible? Is it actually working? Does it do the things she says it does? Like, where is the
Her board.
scientific rigor, right? Like,
Yeah.
where's
Yeah.
the oversight?
Yeah. God, I'm going to go do an Elizabeth Holmes deep dive after this.
Yes.
I'm
Should we
going to
do a
check.
watch-a-thon of
I'm going to go
the
check in on her. I could watch the show, but the show was very cringy because I had to read the text between her and Sunny, her COO. That's right. She had an inappropriate relationship with her COO. Remember, they were like
I don't
romantically
remember that.
involved. Sunny Balat, I can't remember his last name.
If
I
you're doing one
forgot about that
crime,
part.
just add them up.
Forgot about that part. But if you're listening and you're an Elizabeth Holmes fan, please hit me up after this because the story, fan is a bad word, but the
Yeah, if you're
story
Elizabeth
really,
Holmes and you're listening to this podcast in jail, please call in.
please.
We would really like to talk to you.
I would really love to have you advise me on how to raise capital.
Yes. I'd like to hire you to my forthcoming VC fund that I'm starting now.
That could be so funny. How about this for improv? You pretend to be Elizabeth Holmes. No, I'm just kidding.
I don't know if I could do the like stare thing.
And the lower voice register
Yes.
she had. I thought that was
She does have an amazing voice. I would get voice training to sound like that voice.
Yeah, I want that amazing. Anyways, this episode has been so chaotic and so fun because we really talked about CEOs behaving badly, how it can impact the company. I guarantee you there's like 15 people listening to this. 15's maybe a little, but there might be more listening to this thinking like, I could tell a million more stories about CEOs behaving badly. So if you have them, write in and Sarah and I will do a part 2 with more games involved because I feel like CEOs behaving badly should be a topic of discussion that we have.
Absolutely. And I would extend that to leaders more broadly, because I think that, while we have spent a majority of this podcast talking about CEOs behaving badly, I think that all of us who occupy a leadership chair should be held to account for our behavior. And it's not just CEOs who behave badly in the workplace, even if that has been the focus of this. So please write in with your horror stories of everybody in the, C-suite, I guess.
Everyone behaving badly is
everyone behaving badly.
It's not on your worst behavior. Like, I love that meme that's like, I support women's rights, but I also support women's wrongs. I do not support CEOs' wrongs. Just kidding. I just support any bad leaders. No, I think it's such an interesting conversation that I feel like we could dissect a million different ways. But I loved like talking about these specific use cases, really talking about like the person versus the brand, the impact of the scandal. You're lucky if you don't encounter at least one scandal in your career, either as a CMO or a CPO, because I feel like I've probably encountered too many already and I might encounter another 10. This is so fun. Last thoughts as we're winding down this episode. Last thoughts on CEOs behaving badly, leaders behaving badly, advice.
I think to your point, like you're going to encounter some version of this, I would imagine, like the severity of which will be determined by the specific circumstance. But like, you're not alone. Like when this happens to you, especially if you're in the chief people officer seat or the CMO seat, it can feel like it's just dumped on you. Like this is your problem. That's why I don't like dealing with them, right? I don't like that feeling of like, you have to go clean up after somebody else, whoever that person might be. You're not alone. Like whether it's the folks in Safe Space on the HR side of the house, like whether it's, hiring a crisis PR firm or a crisis manager, like there are people for whom this is their profession. And like Hiba, they love mess. Please like find those people, hire them if you have to, like engage with other folks, like write into Safe Space. I'm sure that your readers have recommendations too, but I think a lot of these, like they fall into kind of like stereotypes of what types of behavior you might run into. And that means that a lot of us have seen it, and a lot of us can help you with like, here's the things that you should think about. You got to make sure your internal and your external messaging matches. You got to make sure the plan, is cross-functional. It's not just like marketing comms or PR or just people. It's like all of it together, right? You have to figure out like, okay, if the worst happens, like who steps in to be the interim CEO? And these are conversations, again, you should have with your other leaders, with folks in the industry, folks who are willing to have that open door to you, but they're also conversations that you should be having with your board, and your board should be having with you. So please make sure that you're reaching out to the resources available to you. And, if there are folks in your organization who aren't comfortable talking about these things, your CEO doesn't want to do the drill, your board doesn't think this is necessarily appropriate, just know you're not alone. You can workshop it with us. You can slide into my DMs on LinkedIn. You can, find us on Safe Space. You can, talk to us about what's going on in your world, and you can bounce ideas off of somebody so that it's not feeling so much like a weight on you alone.
That was a beautiful way to end the episode. I feel comforted, almost like a warm hug. That was so nice. Because it is very lonely. There are things where I'm just like, I can't believe this is happening and I have to clean this up. What do I do? The first thing I do is go to people who I know are also experienced in HR. Because I'm like, you don't know. You don't know what you don't know. And these scenarios are not few and far between.
Right.
They're really not. So many people have experienced them. So This was a fun episode. You'll be back. I can't wait for people to write us in write us in if you have a leadership story, a CEO story. Sarah will be back. And then we're going to someday have a improv style podcast episode, which is hard to do when some of you listen to me and some of you watch us on YouTube. Not many. But we're going to figure it out. Sarah, we're going to have fun together.
We're going to do Make Some Noise. Sam Reich, if you're listening, have us on Game Changer. Have us on Make Some Noise. It would be really weird casting, but we would be all over it. And if not, we're going to absolutely figure out how we do an HR version of that one day.
The corporate version of Make Some Noise. I never thought I could be begging someone for a job, but here we are. Sam, please hit some people up. Hit us up. We are ready and waiting. For people who want to get in touch with you, what's the best way? I always link LinkedIn in the show notes, but what else?
I feel like right now it's LinkedIn. So /Sarah Liz Reynolds. I used to tweet, but I feel increasingly uncomfortable about plugging that platform. You can find me, typically on things like this, where I'm sharing, all of my fun, spicy takes. You can also find me at Lighthouse Research, talking about HR tech and talking about, what it's like to work as an analyst in this space and look at all the vendors from the outside. I am on the outside at the moment. I'm really loving it. I love the ability to come in and talk to vendors about all the great things that they're innovating in the market, and get to see, what our friends in the analyst community do all day, every day. So it's been a great joy to work with the team over at Lighthouse Research and Advisory.
Yay, I love it. And you'll be back. I talk to you all the time. I send you the most insane rage texts, honestly. I'm like, explain this to me. And then I respond 8 hours later, thanks.
Yeah, we both have the texting disease where you send 15 texts and then you don't respond for 15 hours, which I really appreciate, because stylistically it means that we match and neither one of us feels bad.
Yeah, neither one of us is like, why aren't they responding to me?
They don't love me anymore.
Anyways, thank you for being here. This was so fun. This was a blast. I almost ended it with I love you, but that's a weird thing to say to someone
I love you. Say it back.
I love you. Thank you for being here. I'm going to start saying it to all my guests. All my guests are going to be like, what the
I say it to everybody. And I say I love you, say it back, because it does obligate them to say it back to me. And I want to hear it.
Okay, well, everyone listening, we also love all of you.
We love all of you.
We love you. Okay, bye.
Bye.
Thanks for tuning in. Keep up with all the latest HR resources by subscribing on Apple, Spotify, Google, or wherever you listen. And if you love I Hate It Here, tell an HR friend. I'll see you next time.